Yes. What is up with it, good people? It's your boy Joe, and with me are Mike and Tyler. The gang is back at it again, post hunt, and we are ready to talk some action figures, specifically an intellectual property that we all grew up on, that we're all familiar with. We're going to be chatting about the folks, the denizens at the Xavier Institute for Gifted Youngsters. We're talking about everyone's favorite band of mutants, the X-Men. But before we do that, let's check in with Mike and Tyler. How you guys doing?
Good. All right, man. Yeah.
All right. So, anything going on? Any new acquisitions by chance?
No new acquisitions, just still fighting off allergy stuff.
No acquisitions for me. We're in the process of moving, so that's been occupying most of my time.
Yep, that would do it. That would do it. I have new / old acquisitions. So from the bonus episode where Mike and I recapped our toy hunt from Tulsa, I forgot to include this merry band of Spartans, the 2-pack, the Mark 7 and the Gungnir, that was originally a Target exclusive, MSRP for about $40. Found it for 20 at Ye Old Faithful Fan Fortress. So shout out to Fan Fortress for just having the good stuff. And this guy just came in today. I didn't realize he was out, let alone that he was part of a 2-pack that somebody parted out on eBay. Night Force Lieutenant Falcon with the brand new head sculpt that looks so much better than the original release.
I remember that original Lieutenant Falcon came out in Classified series. Man, they took some heat.
It was so bad. It's like it looked like Matt Damon from Team America World Police, which if you've never seen that movie, it was a puppet. But yeah, the head sculpt is so good that I wound up buying another one of just the head to replace my original Lieutenant Falcon release.
Yeah, the original Lieutenant Falcon looked like he was the kind of G.I. Joe that would seize the narcotics and then do them.
I mean, that's still just Lieutenant Falcon, though, isn't it? I mean, let's be real.
You know, one thing I really appreciate about the Classified series is I feel like Night Force went very underappreciated, and then the Classified series comes out, and I think there's a lot of people that are seeing that thinking, that's actually pretty on point. So I'm glad for that, because
I think the reason, a part of the reason is that they were mostly Walmart exclusives, and those were a little harder to obtain because they just sell out so fast.
I just appreciate the Night Force because the aesthetic is very streamlined. It's very urban combat with like shades and like accents of like OD green or forest green.
Yeah,
that works for me.
I need that Classified Night Force beachhead. That's what I need.
The one that I made.
Yeah, I need that in my life.
Yeah, so did I. That's why I was like, listen, if it's going to be a while, I'm just going to do it myself.
Yep, my God.
But I will say Pulse has been a lot better at those Tiger Force and Night Force pre-orders having some. Because once it goes to Walmart and Target, I haven't had any good luck. Because sometimes they'll say we're dropping it at 9 a.m. Eastern, and then they end up dropping them at 7 and it's already sold out. I don't know how it is lately. I can't remember the last time I did one, but when it first started, man, it was a nightmare. It was a big headache.
Man, I feel like I should have a commemorative t-shirt of like I survived the Tiger Force exclusive, like Target exclusive line, because trying to find a beachhead or a Major Blood was an absolute just misery.
Yeah, I remember there were some social media folks that looked out for everybody by putting the UPC codes and stuff out there so we could find them, on the apps and stuff. You had to do stuff like that.
I think I remember Yak Face on Instagram was definitely one of them. So shout out to Yak Face.
And His Tank, I think, was another one. Was it?
Yep. The Shark, the artist
Shark
Shark.
News.
Shark
Yeah,
News,
Artist
yep,
Sharks.
for sure.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's all I've got for right now. Keep subscribed and keep checking the space, because I've gotten a few kind of Night Force customs that I've started and I've done, and I showed off the beachhead, but I've got a couple more in the chamber, so to speak. So I will definitely be showing them off whenever they're ready.
Nice.
Switching from GI Joe, we're gonna let's switch over to Marvel, specifically Westchester, New York, the home of Professor Charles Xavier, a bald man with a dream and a seemingly infinite amount of money to bankroll his private strike force of teenagers and grown-ups that we affectionately know and love as the X-Men.
So what I'd like to talk about and get you guys to talk about first is, what was y'all's first exposure to the X-Men? What was your first aha moment? Hey, this is something cool that I can get into. Why don't you tell us a little bit about that, Tyler?
Okay, so my first exposure, I was aware of the X-Men because I had friends who read comic books. But I think we've talked about this in earlier episodes. I didn't grow up with comic books. It just wasn't something that my parents got me into, and it just wasn't something that I had exposure to until I was a little bit older.
Yeah, because it was back when you just couldn't get them online either. So
correct,
it's like you were stuck in your little hole.
Yeah, if it wasn't something my parents had provided or would provide for me, then I didn't see them. So my exposure kind of came third party through my friends. But what really got me into the X-Men and what really opened my eyes and said, oh my gosh, this is amazing, like probably a lot of people, is the 90s cartoon. Absolutely loved it. It's really the only cartoon that I can remember that on Saturday mornings, like, I will watch that show. I'm going to plan my freaking weekend around watching that show. And it's interesting. I can't recall what network aired it.
Fox.
But Fox. Okay, I do recall, and this makes sense that it's Fox, because in typical Fox fashion, they would air episodes out of order, and that drove me insane, because that show is, in my opinion, brilliantly written, brilliantly designed, but it has to be presented in order because it is an ongoing story. So you start doing stuff out of order and it gets wonky. But that was my first exposure to the X-Men.
Okay. Joseph, what do you got?
My first exposure to the X-Men was through just absorbing it through osmosis, because you and our oldest brother Will were absolutely just ate up with the X-Men. Bought into it hook, line, and sinker. Like, you guys would go to the comic book store every weekend, pick up the new releases, just quiet as a pin drop, drive homes and through the Arby's drive through while you guys were just reading your new comics.
They have the meats.
They did back then. They still do now. So and like Tyler, the X-Men animated series was an absolute game changer. Especially since they were adapting a lot of the story arcs from the comic books and kind of like basically doing the MCU before the MCU was even a thing.
Yeah. My first exposure it's a very specific moment, and this is stuck with me. Our older brother Will had Uncanny X-Men number 282 on his dresser. And just like any brother, I felt the right to take it off the dresser and look at it. And I read it. I was young, and I just remember, wow. The cover was done by Jim Lee. It had Storm on it, Cable, Archangel, and Wolverine. So well done. Like, as a kid, like, you're looking at that aesthetic and you really haven't seen anything. I remember just reading it, and Extinction Agenda, just to give a little synopsis, all the X-Men are captured and there's torture going on. Like, Storm is in essentially on the cover a like prison uniform, and she's shaved bald. They really did a good job of putting them in peril. But I remember that as my first exposure, and I was hooked, man. Next thing I know,
Which issue did you say it was? Sorry.
282.
So 282 is actually, if memory serves, it's actually the first appearance of Bishop.
Oh, did I mess it up?
Because that's actually one that I have graded.
Yeah. Okay. Let me see. 272.
272. Okay.
Yep. That's it. My bad. 272. Sorry, guys.
No, you're good.
After that, it was just
Off to the races.
off to the races. And then the cartoon came out. So I remember around that time when we'd go to the mall to take our grandmother to
Go pay her Sears.
go pay her Sears credit card. And remember, this is before internet, guys. We would go buy Marvel cards from Kiosk and Walden Books. And man, we would just get these cards, swap them with each other, and spend our, allowance or, lawn mowing money and get these Marvel cards. And we were always geeking out over the X-Men on them. They were really cool. So it was like just a steamroll at that time of just X-Men.
Lots of fond memories with those cards. Right there with you. Collected them every chance I could lay hands on them, and we would trade them out for different people for different what you preferred. And I gotta tell you, there's some really nice cards. Artwork's beautiful, really well designed, and really like the aesthetic from those '90s trading cards. Yeah. Well, let's leave it at that.
Okay. We'll go with Joseph with this, and then Tyler. What's some of y'all's favorite comic book issues and runs?
Well, off the top of my head, I'm going to have to go with Age of Apocalypse Classic, because they basically held the entire line of X books hostage for 4 or 5 months to tell this one kind of one-off. So that was really great. I also really enjoyed the Fatal Attractions, like big X book crossover, because there was low-key a lot of different character stuff going on, because that was about the time that Ileana died. So then you had Colossus turning heel and joining Magneto. You had Magneto ripping the adamantium out of Wolverine that we saw in X-Men 97 just a while ago. So there's a lot of stuff going on in that, and it was really cool, but it never seemed forced. It all seemed like it was just a natural extension of the story.
Yeah, I agree. As the Colossus guy, I liked that they showed why he turned, and not just, I'm tired of being with the X-Men, all we do, blah, blah, blah. It's like we got to see, how tragic Ileana's death was, and then how that affected him. And then so he turned, and I didn't think it was that big of a surprise. Go ahead, Jofus.
Like I can sit here and rattle off, but I feel like those two are always my go-tos as far as like stories featuring the X-Men anyway. Tyler,
you got anything?
I do, yeah. So obviously Age of Apocalypse is amazing. Love that. But I'm going to go with Days of Future Past.
Oh, man. I think he just added our credibility back. Because we didn't mention it. I think that's a pretty popular one, right?
Yeah. And I feel like that and the Phoenix Saga. Anytime somebody talks about X-Men, you have to mention Phoenix Saga and Days of Future Past.
Our credibility was on low because I messed up the issue number. Tyler's bringing it back by mentioning Days of Future Past. Can't believe I did that. But
it's child memories are weird things. But dystopian future stuff in general I love, and so that drew me to that. But I love those stories. I love seeing an old Wolverine, like old man Wolverine, and kind of seeing that like most dire circumstance.
I mean, it also brought one of the most iconic covers of all time.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one with Wolverine and Kitty, and there's the posters, like the wanted
All the
posters of.
deceased,
Yeah.
yeah.
I saw somebody do a riff on that from Star Wars, and it was Obi-Wan Kenobi in the Wolverine role, and you see posters of all of the Jedi Masters deceased from Order 66, and it
Yeah.
looks like he was on the run and not having a good time.
Yeah.
So that was very thematically appropriate.
Didn't IDW do a Transformers issue with that?
Probably.
That was
Although the main kind of riff of a famous comic book cover from IDW that I remember is the Megatron version of the Killing Joke, where he's got Reflector doing the camera pose of the Joker.
By the way, that cover art is Uncanny X-Men 141. If anybody's want to look that up, that's
Tyler's bringing the credibility back, people.
Yeah,
Good job, Tyler.
we'll definitely collect a slideshow of all of these covers that we're talking about and put them on the Instagrams.
Yeah.
I might be late to the comic train, but I'm on the train.
That's all that matters.
I know your ability to devour comics, man. I respect, because we got you into the G.I. Joe comics and you just injected them.
I did, yeah. I still am injecting them. It started a whole another whole another landslide for me that just took off and yeah.
I remember you had talked about starting reading it, and I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And then you were talking about the Ace issue. I want to say it's issue 21, but I mean, come on, don't hold me for issue titles anymore, please.
No, we're in it now.
but like I was like, that's like issue 21, and he's already up to it. Like, man, he went after it.
That's
no, issue number
34.
21. Yeah, issue 21 is the famous silent issue.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right.
Silent interlude.
That's right. Man, I am horrible today.
Dude, I mean, I didn't remember. I literally looked it up. Like,
Here's the thing.
I don't have that memorized.
We've grown up, like, you didn't always grown up with me, but I always grew up with you. You've forgotten more about G.I. Joe than most people will ever hope to learn. So it's okay.
It was issue number 34.
Yeah, 34. Yeah.
Jeez, Tyler.
So yeah.
I got after it, man.
So getting back to X-Men though. Getting back to X-Men.
Did you have any other stuff, Tyler, that you remember?
The ones that you guys literally, I would have said Age of Apocalypse, Phoenix Saga, and then Days of Future Past for me is,
Yeah.
I also really got into Messiah Complex when it came out because I was
also on my list.
Yeah,
but heck yeah, I like that one.
Hit us with your list then.
I'll start off with the Messiah Complex, because I remember the artwork just being insanely good.
Mm-hmm.
And it put Cable in a role where he was protecting a child, and he was really the bad guy, or he was perceived to be the bad guy, but he was just not the one you wanted to fight. He just wasn't that guy.
So he was perceived as he was made to be believed as the bad guy because he's the one who showed up and like kidnapped this baby. However, the X-Men were wanting to get I guess effectively control or possession of the baby for their means. The Marauders, I think it was the Marauders, wanted to get her for their means. Sinister had a whole angle he was working on.
Yeah.
The only person who was focused on getting this child and treating her with a modicum of humanity and respect and raising her in a way that would bring her up, that she could take care of herself, was Cable.
Yeah, and that was perfect.
And I'll never forget reading that issue and with the big 1-page panel reveal that Cable was back, because he had been MIA, and possibly even presumed killed for a long time. And whenever I flipped that page and I saw him, because it was a beautiful one shot of him like with this giant gun that could not exist in real life, and he's got like this like little like baby carrier strapped to his chest, and he's just like
Yeah.
talking to this baby. I was just like,
Didn't he also
let's
have
go.
a teddy bear clipped on his belt?
Yeah, that was in the. I think that was more in the like the Cable series.
Okay.
That was tied into it.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was one of my favorites. And again, the artwork, the writing, because that was back when Ed Brubaker had his. I can't remember if that was before or after he was coming off of Captain America writing The Winter Soldier, which was adapted.
Yeah.
But that was good stuff. And I just want to preface now, all of the X-Men comic book stuff that we're talking about, I'm pretty sure it just stops it. Like it goes from like maybe the 80s, like the Claremont run, and then it abruptly probably stops at Messiah Complex.
Yeah.
At least my stuff does anyway.
I've talked about that Cable in the X-Force run. It was a good read. It's nice to see some character progression. Art style was a little different. I remember they did some weird stuff with Cable's arm. There were some issues that's some really good artwork, and there were some issues where it was like, wow, they went the complete opposite direction.
Yeah. The issues with Salvador LaRocca were good.
Yeah, but I'm going to talk about a specific issue, and hopefully I wrote down the correct issue on my notes. But Uncanny X-Men number 390.
Ooh,
The
yep.
issue where Colossus dies. And I think that's where comics can shine when you're writing them, is when they're doing first person. Because you can give a thought and then just leave it. And they do a really good job of less writing in that one. And just kind of letting the picture silhouettes and the thought bubbles just shine. And there was no question of why he did it. You know, in his mind, he was completely committed. So it was just well written, well drawn. I still have that issue. And then number 303, which was the actual death of Ileana, that kind of was the precursor to Fatal Attractions.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was really good because Jubilee and I want to say Shadowcat hangs out with Ileana right before she dies, and they know she's bad. You know, she's bad off, and it was just nothing they could do. And I thought that was something you don't see a lot in superhero comics, where it's like the hero fails. So
Well, it's just
you know,
like nature, like
yeah,
inevitably doing. It's kind of the same principle that they did with the original Superman movie with Chris Reeves. Like he's got all of this power, but he couldn't stop a heart attack that his dad had. You know.
yeah. So I thought that was it's a style of writing you don't see in comics, because it's usually, you know, bad guy fights good guy. Does the good guy win? Proceed to B. Does the bad guy lose? Proceed to A. You know, it's which is fine. I mean, it's why we read them, right? But it was nice to have a curveball. That's all I got for the comic runs. Do you have anything that we missed?
There's a very specific issue of Cable, and I want to say that it's Cable number 88, where somebody passes away and Cable is standing at a graveside, and it's one of those issues where it was an interlude issue, but those were my favorite, because that's where you get to know the X-Men. Those are like what I call the emotional buy-in issues, where yeah, Magneto can be doing all kinds of crazy stuff up in space, and we got to go stop him. But those interlude issues explain and fill in like why you should care, and like
Yeah.
why you should invest in these characters stopping the bad guy. So, but it was an issue where somebody passed away that was really close to Cable, and Nightcrawler was kind of overseeing kind of the funeral at the graveside, and he just is straight up consoling Cable the entire issue. And at one point, he's even just straight up just quoting scripture. And I thought it was really neat. And also the cover, because you're not supposed to judge a book by the cover, but when your covers are done by Ian Churchill, you absolutely can, and
Yeah.
you're probably right.
Yeah.
it's still one of my favorite covers to this day.
Him and Willis Perticio, man, they provided us with some great artwork.
Yes, they did.
All right, here we go. Now we get to go towards the more hot take portion of it. Tyler, give me your top 5 X-Men.
We're going to go in reverse order.
And
all right?
no, you cannot choose Wolverine 5 times.
No, don't. No, I'm not even. No, I'm not gonna. I wouldn't do anything like that. So, bottom to top, right? Number 5, Sentinels.
They're not X-Men though.
Number 4 is Sentinels.
Don't you do this?
Number 3 is Master Mold.
Tyler, that's our next
who is a
topic
Sentinel?
villains.
Oh, I'm sorry. I got ahead of myself. Gosh, real talk. Colossus has always been my favorite. I think Mikey's your favorite as well. So big Colossus fan.
That's awesome.
Obviously, we love Wolverine. I don't know anybody that doesn't love Wolverine. I like Bishop. I like.
Interesting.
I want to like Gambit, guys. I just not a big Gambit fan. I want to love him, but I just Forge is probably maybe number 1 for me.
Nice.
He counts as an X-Men, right? Yeah, because I mean he's an engineer. He's an engineer. He's a builder of things. So it's probably Colossus. This is tough. I should have maybe thought about this in advance, but it's got to be Colossus, Forge, Bishop, Wolverine, and then
Howling Dog.
Yeah, sorry, my dog's going nuts over here. It's gonna be Cable. It's Cable.
Nice.
I'd love to pick Rogue and Storm, but this isn't a list of the ones I want to hang out with. This is a list of my favorites. Yeah, that's gonna be my list. Those are my people.
Okay. Alrighty, Joe. Go ahead, Joe.
Oh, okay. I don't have a fancy. I don't think I'm going to do like a fancy way of counting down because it's really difficult because mine change pretty kind of.
Well, yeah,
they're pretty interchangeable
with age and
also just like reading and just so I'm going to say that my absolute stalwarts, like, don't question it. The partial reason why I just don't like any of the live action X-Men movies besides Deadpool 2 is because Cable is my favorite. Like, Cable and Cyclops are my favorite X-Men.
Yeah.
Just Cable is just so cool, and he had like the metal arm with all the pouches, very 90s. I'm a 90s kid. Like that speaks to me. Cyclops
he was created by Rob Liefeld, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, Rob Liefeld
makes sense. That tracks.
Yeah, Rob Liefeld, and I want to say Louise Simonson. Yeah, it was Louise because Walt Simonson was her husband. So yeah, I'm pretty sure it was Louise Simonson and Rob Liefeld, and he's just so cool, man. And he's one of those utility X-Men that you put him in anything, and immediately gravitas shows up and stakes show up.
Yeah,
and he's kind of a cheat code. And Cyclops, I know I love Nate Gray, but he's not the X-Man to me. To me, sure. The X-Man is Scott Summers. And
okay,
speaking, and and here's my hot take: I'm not a Wolverine fan. Never have been. I do dabble in drawing a little bit, and as I will say, he is fun to draw, but I just don't. He's just not the cat's pajamas to me. And I feel like Tyler's about to burst if he doesn't say something.
Hot take. That's a really hot take.
That's a hot take.
But Michael will know this. It's a hot take I've had for about 36 years, give or take.
Perfectly reasonable, right? I'm not going to tell anybody what they should or shouldn't like. Like, I get it. I will tell you that my opinion, and I'd be curious to know if this is kind of out there. My opinion on Cyclops is very skewed by the animated series, the show, where he's frankly kind of a punk,
Yeah.
and just a whiner. And so I have never liked Cyclops because that was my introduction to him. As I understand it, he's actually a genuinely good leader in the comics. They just
Yeah.
did a really poor job of translating that into the show, and so he comes off in the show as frankly a whiny little punk.
They did a really poor job of that in the cartoon. They did an abysmally poor job of that in the live action. And I don't even think James Marsden was a wrong cast. I feel like if given proper material, he could be really good. And if they do some kind of like revival where they bring him back in to play like a Old Man Summers kind of deal, I think he could do a really great job. But what he was given in the era that he was given it by the people who he was given it, it wasn't. I really didn't care for the live action X-Men movies. Like Wolverine is not 6'3" and handsome. He is 5'3", stocky. That was like the one part I loved about the Deadpool Wolverine movie was where he goes to visit all of the actual Wolverines.
The short one,
the comic book accurate one. I was like, I was so happy. I was like, yes, I feel seen. I feel seen. And then he jumped to the Age of Apocalypse and showed like the one-handed one, and I was like, all right, well, I might as well leave the theater now because this is not going to get better than this for me. I'm glad I stuck around though because Gambit showing up, it did get better. But
so you owe me 5, dude.
Okay, so there's 2. And I mean, there's always, and like my kind of periphery guys are like, I mean, I feel like if you don't like Colossus, there's something wrong with you because Peter is just, he's a gem of a human being. He's a gem of a mutant. The quiet strength, just there's a reason he's called Colossus and nobody questions it.
Yeah.
I love Nightcrawler. I love Gambit. Recently I've kind of developed a more of appreciation for the originals. So, Angel, especially Beast.
Yeah.
I feel like Beast is really cool. Iceman. And one that I've never actually, I don't remember reading a lot of, but anytime he pops up, I'm just like, oh yeah, hey, it's Cannonball. Like Sam Guthrie is just a good dude.
Yeah. So my top 5 are Rogue. I like Rogue, Cable, Storm, Gambit, and Colossus in reverse order.
Yeah.
Those are just my 5. My taste have changed since I first picked up the comic at like 9 years old. They've evolved, but Colossus has always been my favorite.
Can confirm.
So, all right, Tyler. Now you get to talk about. Oh, go
Hold
ahead,
on,
Joseph.
Before we do that, I wanna give a shout out to the issue. I can't remember which one specifically it is, but there was an issue where, again, it was one of those one-off character ones where Colossus breaks up with Kitty, and Wolverine takes Colossus out drinking at a bar, and with the sole intention of getting Colossus so hammered that he's going to beat him up for breaking up with Kitty. But when they're at the bar and as they're drinking, some ruffian, some absolute hooligan causes a scene, and it is none other than Juggernaut. So Colossus and Juggernaut get in a knockdown drag out fight at a bar, all because Wolverine wanted to take Peter to the bar and get him drunk so that he can beat him up. I have that issue, and it's still lovely. I think it's even referenced by name and number in Deadpool 2 when Juggernaut shows up. So, Tyler,
now you get to talk about the villains. Your 5 favorite villains.
Okay.
Go ham, dude.
Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. Sentinels are number 5. Giant robots. I don't think I
say
need to say
less.
any more
I
than
mean,
that.
No one.
done.
I don't. I feel like nobody
No-
listening to this is gonna argue giant robots with
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
So
Number 4, if I may be so bold, is also Sentinels. Did I mention they're giant robots with laser beams in their
you
hands?
mentioned that.
Okay. Number 3 is Master Mold.
because
Switching it up.
Well, he's a giant robot who makes Sentinels.
which are a giant. So he's a
Those
giant
are
robot
giant robots.
who makes giant robots.
Yeah, I mean, duh. You guys are never going to guess number 2.
I'm gonna go
Sentinel?
with. Ooh, which one was like the organic Sentinel? Was it Nimrod?
Yeah.
Yeah, that was Nimrod. Yeah. I'm going to go with Juggernaut for number 2.
Nice.
That's
'Cause
solid. That's
I
solid.
I absolutely love Juggernaut. And then number 1 is Nimrod. Love the fact that he self assembles and they tear him apart and he rebuilds them. Like that's like he's like the peak Sentinel. What is the which X-Men movie is it that has the Sentinels? I can't remember which one of the movies it is where they have the Sentinels that are the future Sentinels that are like
The Days of Future Past.
Yeah,
I only
okay.
know that because in the opening bit where it's like apocalyptic and everything's gone to crap, they actually show Bishop who's running through with like the dreadlocks. He's got the giant gun, and I'm like,
Yeah.
yes, we finally
Yes.
got a movie. And
Yep.
then what do? They
Right.
send Hugh Jackman to the past, and they just stay there.
Yeah, they messed it all up. Yep. But that version of Sentinels I love. My first love is the version of the Sentinels from the 90s comic, of course. Toy wise, you cannot beat. You just can't beat the Build-A-Figure Sentinel. Like this is peak toy design, ladies and gentlemen. This is amazing.
So that's the Build-A-Figure that we were talking about in that previous of the I think it was episode 2 where we talk about our wish lists, right?
I think it was, yeah.
You want that to
Yeah.
come back.
Very much so. Like, give me this. I mean, if you give me just this, I'm okay. But give me this in the '90s color scheme. This is, I mean, it's purple and blue, right? But it's not the right hues.
Yeah.
And give me this in the night in that
And the
color
pink
scheme.
and purple.
Yes, and
So, Tyler,
yes,
as someone that's watched X-Men 97,
yeah.
the episode Remember It,
Remember it. Yeah.
would you want like a HasLab for that just devastating Sentinel? What was the name of the Sentinel, Joseph?
I have no idea what it was called, but it definitely had Godzilla vibes, but as a
Yeah.
robot.
Yeah, Godzilla Sentinel. I like that name.
You're also a big Godzilla guy. Like,
Yeah.
and again, it's one of those things like giant robots. Like you don't have to defend that. Giant lizard things, like you don't have to defend that either.
They call them Tri-Sentinel, right? Or am I thinking of somebody else? They call them. I don't remember. But yeah, I mean, I love all things giant robots. I love the Sentinels. Just super great stories, super fun, action sequences with those things. And again, you can make some amazing toys. Like this is an amazing toy, and I love it. It's one of my very favorite toys that I possess. And
So Google says remember, it refers to the Wild Sentinel of Earth 92131 as just Master Mold.
Well, okay then.
well, that makes sense.
Man, could you imagine the size of that HasLab?
It'd basically be a Unicron.
Yeah, I want it. I do, but
But you're moving, so
I'm moving, and this thing right
Like,
here.
the fact that you, speaking of which, I just want to give a shout out. The fact that whilst you are moving and putting all of your worldly belongings into like boxes and pods and stuff, the fact that you would leave out your giant HasLab Sentinel as a centerpiece, as decoration, as a backdrop for this episode where we're talking about X-Men,
You're the man.
just kudos.
Yeah, thank you. Tells me. I mean, as much as you love that, that's how much my wife hates it. So it's. I appreciate that. I need some love to counterbalance
For sure.
the angst.
Maybe not hate. It's probably just more chagrin or
Yeah, it's
dismay.
Yeah, there you go.
Con-
or just
confusion,
confusion's probably
confoundment.
why that? What
Yeah.
are you doing with that? What even is that?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
All right, Joseph, give me your villains.
My villains. So if Cable is one of my favorites, I'm contractually obligated to list two right off the bat. Specifically, probably actually three. Apocalypse, Strife, Mr. Sinister.
Okay, that makes sense.
I'm going to go with Magneto. I know that they tried to do a lot of stuff like within recent years to try to retcon him into being a misunderstood good guy, but no, like he was written as a bad guy. Let him be a bad guy.
Yeah.
And I really wish that we would have gotten an X-Men movie where Charles Dance had a turn to play Magneto, because I think that would have been really cool. And then for my last one, man, I think I will have to go. Maybe, I mean, Sentinels are really cool. It's really hard to argue against giant robot, but I feel like you've said enough Sentinels for Mike and I. I'm gonna go with like a purely visual, like from a purely visual standpoint, Sabretooth. Sabretooth just has, like, it doesn't matter what he's in, either in the X-Men animated series, the comic books, X-Men Evolution, even the first live action movie. Sabretooth just looks cool.
Yeah.
And there is no question that he is a bad guy.
Yep.
So
my 5. I'm going to start off with number 5, Sabretooth. Use it right away. We're going to go right into taking Joseph's stuff. Number 4 is Mystique. She'd be a character I'd like to write just because, and shape-shifting, like the mental capacity that not mental capacity, but your mindset that you would have to be in to assume different shapes, different people, different genders, different species. Like, what would that do? Because you're always having to just adapt. So would you think more like a predator, more like a wild animal, like a spider, or something that's always hunting? That's just something weird stuff I think about. Number 3, I got Apocalypse. He's always the big bad that all the big bads are trying to either stop or help, right?
mm-hmm.
Number 2, I have Omega Red.
Oh, good choice.
He's terrifying, man. In the comics, I know there was, like, when you see him on a cover, I'm going to read
Stuff's going down.
I'm going to read that because he's going to be menacing. And he just doesn't stop, right? Unless you stop him. And then my number 1 is Magneto. I like the versions of Magneto where he has been a noiseless, patient spider. And he is just kind of set up on House of M and has been like, or, made an island. And he's been like, leave me alone, I'll leave you alone. And then he's like Joseph, where you make fun of him. And then he just, like, you say a joke about his beard. And the next thing you know, he's like making all kinds of jokes about everything you've ever done wrong.
Listen, that was, it's like, I'm not that guy anymore.
I gave you a punch on your shoulder and you're going to slit my throat. That's Magneto. He has to be provoked, but then his like level of progression is just crazy.
He has no middle ground. He's either in hiding, or I'm going to put a base on an asteroid in space. And
he reminds me of Nolan Ryan, where if you crowd his plate, he will send a fastball to your ear. Does your actions of crowding the plate a little bit deserve a 90 plus mile an hour fastball, maybe approaching triple digits? No.
But that's what you're getting. That's what he's got.
And everyone knows Nolan Ryan was going to do that if he crowded his plate. But every now and then, someone would want to test the waters, and he would do it.
Let's be clear. It's Mr. Ryan's plate. So just back up.
Exactly. But that's how I liked him, and I thought that it's a really cool way to have a villain, because if you're going to write a hero, you need to write your villain. You need to take the same time to write your villains. And having someone that is just wanting to be left alone and is not actively going at you, but you're the one that instigated it. You're the one that started it. Mess with the bull, get the horns kind of thing.
He's very much like the mutant version of Doctor Doom in a way.
Yeah.
And I would echo, Joe, your opinion on not being on board with him being portrayed as this misunderstood hero. That trope is so worn out to me, and a lot of that's because I'm a big Star Wars fan too, and I get so tired of this redemption no, let's just have bad guys that are bad guys. Like let's
redemption is great, and it's very important because without redemption, the original trilogy of Star Wars doesn't work.
Yeah.
So
I'm with you, but you did it one time, and it was a brilliant story. It doesn't need to be in every freaking Star Wars episode.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong. Like
it's like a safety. Instead of it being an emergency button, it's a safety switch, right?
Yeah.
Correct.
Like
right.
Darth Vader needed to be Darth Vader could be redeemed. There was like a strong case was made for it, and he was redeemed. Emperor Palpatine does not need to be redeemed.
So
let Emperor Palpatine be Emperor Palpatine. Yeah, you're right. Just wait till we get to the Star Wars episode. Just wait.
Sorry, just plucked the string there.
Yeah, let's let the good guys let's let the good guys be great guys. Let's let the bad guys be just bad guys. That's why we're here. That's why people love stories,
And I like that's what makes Magneto stand out to me, at least where I've enjoyed reading him, is you messed around and you found out.
Yep.
And that's just how it is.
That's right.
But moving on, I would like to know what y'all's team would be if you were going to write an X-Men team comic. What would your 5 characters be? We'll start off with Tyler, so that way he has no time to think about this question.
He may need to.
Give me 1 second here. I got a yes.
I'll tell you what. How
we'll
about
start with Joe?
Yeah, we'll start with Joe. Me. So, my team, I've been thinking about I think about this probably more than I should. Like, do I have a scenario, or is it just am I just picking my 5 favorites?
What would you want to write? What 5 characters would you want on your team that you're going to write a comic for?
If Marvel showed up to my doorstep and said, we're going to let you write, we're going to give you a limited run, we're going to let you write X-Men, and
you want to write it.
Yeah. And we're going to bring in Ian Churchill. We're going to back a Brinks truck up to Ian Churchill or Willis Peticio or Jim Lee, and they're going to draw it. It would basically be an Old Man Summers where
be Summers crew.
It would Cyclops would be the focus, but it would kind of be like the in my head it's like the last X-Men. It's like one of the last X-Men stories ever told, where Cyclops has hung up his blue and gold pouched tights, and he has taken his inheritance from that Xavier has left him, and he's opened up a orphanage, or he's taken over the orphanage in Nebraska that he grew up in. And with him, helping him out, kind of run the place and be like pseudo mom to the pseudo dad that he is to all these orphans who just so happen to be mutants. Those would be kind of the new batch. Would be Rogue, who has she's managing her mutant abilities by like pharmaceutical means, but she's really not super, like, she just kind of does it so that she can take care of her and Gambit's son. Where's Gambit at? You'd have to keep reading to find out. And along the way, like, mutants will come and go. Like, they're working on a farm project, but it's really dry and arid. So he puts in a call to Storm, who comes out, waters the crops, and all she asks, the only payment she asks in return is a cup of coffee or something that they have.
So it would be just Rogue and Cyclops with like a revolving cast of young ones and old friends.
Yes, but eventually, because it wouldn't be an X-Men story if Cable didn't come from the past beat to heck and pleading with his dad for help because of some giant apocalypse level threat looming. So,
Yeah.
and and there'd be the main Summers gang would be Cyclops, Cable, and Havoc. But I feel like the most fun that I would probably have figuring out would be not the father son dynamic, because I feel like that's been done enough, but the uncle's nephew dynamic that could happen between Havoc and Cable. I think would be a lot of fun, especially just like having kids
that's
and
already
them
been
having uncles.
explored a little bit. I don't remember what run it was from, but Havoc is Mr. Law and Order, and Cable's not. he's
Yeah.
he's working on that future stuff. So yeah, that could be interesting to explore.
I think it'd be fun. It's a funny thing getting older. As Tyler didn't noted, a lot of his translations, he is not the nicest. He's kind of a turd sometimes, but I feel like he has to be that way because he was entrusted with this dream of Charles Xavier of a world where mutants and humans can live together.
In X-Men 97, they did a good job of kind of softening some of the corners and ridges
sure.
on them. It gave them some more human elements in like a Days of Our Lives kind of way, putting
Yeah.
in them a very weird situation, and finally going off on a reporter, not doing the standard PC stuff he should have been doing. So they're trying.
Yeah. But also Beast is going to show up, and their kind of banner and back and forth would very much be like Kelsey Grammer played him in live action, so it'd be very on the nose kind of, but it would be very kind of like Niles and Frazier.
Yeah.
Between Cyclops and Beast, and I think that'd be a lot of fun.
Yeah. All right, Tyler, what you got for us?
Okay, you guys ready for this?
Yes.
Let me guess.
A Sentinel.
You're good. No,
everyone's gonna fight a Sentinel.
No, you're gonna go with the Brood. Brood Sentinels.
All right, check me out. Here's my team. I'm gonna take Cyclops. I want Angel.
Okay.
Give me Iceman.
Nice.
And then I'll take Storm and Wolverine.
Okay. Almost OGs.
But
They're
I
Sentinels.
want my story set in the interim between what we would consider to be the present day X-Men and Days of Future Past, where what we are seeing, my story is the death of Cyclops, the death of Angel, the death of Iceman, the apprehension of Storm, and Wolverine being the only one of this squad to somehow miraculously not be killed or captured. I mean, because he's Wolverine. But
so kind of like the last Ronin.
Yes,
from Teenage
I want
Mutant
to see
Ninja Turtles.
Exactly. I want to see this army of Sentinels, absolutely Sentinels, hunting down and killing these mutants, these would-be heroes, and I want to see the events that lead to that dystopic future that where Days of Future Past is set. So that's the story I want to tell, and the squads I want to build is, I'm almost envisioning you're following around, a couple groups of mutants, whether it's a full squad of 4 or 5 or 1 or 2 mutants together as they're being hunted or ambushed and eliminated. And so seeing the ways that they are, and call me morbid, okay, but that's the story that I want to see, because it takes me into that era of X-Men that I love so much, which is that future, that dystopic future where everything has gone awry and giant robots are everywhere. That's my crew. That's the stories I want to tell.
So a nice bridge piece.
That'd be good.
Yeah. It makes, when you were explaining that, I was like, hold on, this just is making a lot of sense.
Yeah, because it would butt everything up, right?
What about you? The one person who majored in creative writing, has a degree in it, and is actually qualified to tell these stories.
I'm gonna say my 5 right away, and then I'm gonna give explanations after. So My leader would be Storm. I'd have Gambit, Colossus, Blink, and I would either make my own X-Men or I would try for someone obscure like a Dust or like a Hope Summers. I know she's not obscure, but someone that I could have maybe a little creative freedom with, maybe like a Chamber, some creative license where I could have some room to play. And I know Dust has passed away, but I mean it's comics, right?
Yeah.
I see Magic in current comics covers, so I imagine they brought her back. So it's not like I'd be doing anything criminal, like killing off the Blue Lanterns or something.
Oh, wait till we talk about that. I'm still not recovered. I'm still not happy with DC, as a matter of fact, over that.
But the reason I picked these characters is the characters that by having them in it, I could have access to. If I had Storm, I could have an appearance by Forge. I could have, if I have Gambit, so I could have an appearance by Rogue. I have Colossus, so I could have an appearance by Domino or Kitty. And
if you had Hope, you could have Cable.
Exactly. But if I made my own, then I could set up interactions with each of them, how they fit in with this established group. And, Blink, I would like to just set her up, really, as just a capable character. Because I always thought she was, the emergency button, like the smoke grenade. It's too hot. Let me just smoke bomb and get out of here. So, but maybe put her on a path where she's learning from Gambit how to fight, do a little investing.
And are you such a Blink guy because of her appearance in Age of Apocalypse? And they just kind of really, to my knowledge, they just didn't do anything much with her after that?
I read what they did with her, and to be honest, that's a main reason why I would want to write her, is just to write her out of what they did. I guess that's a hot take.
I mean, if it's like with Marvel within the past like 15 years, it's not a hot take.
Yeah, but that's a character I'd like to set on a different path than what's happened.
That's how you know he's a creative writing major, because he could have just said fix. Really, said basically the same thing.
I mean, writers are going to do things and they're going to take things in their own direction. And if, like I said, if I was going to tell my story, I would want to tell my story, just like I respect what they did. Do I agree with it? No. Am I ever going to agree with it? No. But I would have that opportunity, and that's what I would do, unapologetically, like they did. Okay. So we talked about the X-Men. We're a figure podcast, so you're probably wondering why we haven't talked about figures. Well, now we're going to. Tyler, what are the 90s figs? Did you have any of those? Talk about what were some of the X-Men figures you got and you might be looking for.
I literally...
Or is that a rabbit hole you don't want to go down?
Yeah, it's not that I don't want to go down it. I really have not owned. I bought the figures necessary to assemble this guy.
Sentinel.
I still have the Sentinel. I don't have the figures, and I don't remember what freaking figures they were, to be perfectly frank with you. Like, I just wanted to build the daggum Sentinel.
So their marketing worked.
Yeah, no, it was brilliant. And I said it on an earlier episode. If they do it again, I will do it again. And guess what? I'm older now, and I have access to
grown-up money.
More. Yeah, I can build many of these, and I would if I had the opportunity. So this is the figure. This is it. This is the Build-A-Figure Sentinel. This is not the Chinese knockoff. This is the real deal. Okay, this finger articulation right here, right there. But this is the real thing, and I love it. It's a great figure. I will say, if we're going to talk about figures, one thing I have a bone to pick with Hasbro. They made a Sentinel with the correct coloring that came along with the X-Men 97 show. It has no articulation. It's like solid legs, solid arms, solid. I guess you could probably move the head. I don't know, but there's no elbows. There's none of the articulation points that I want. Like, I love Sentinels, and I'll buy almost any Sentinel. I'm not going to buy that. Like, come on, do better. Like, you guys, I'm deep. Here's my hot take for the episode. I am deeply offended by how poorly they built the Sentinel for X-Men '97. It should be a fully articulated figure. It should be at least this good. Yes, I would pay more for it, but it should be at least this good. You've proven you can make a really, really good one. And to come in so far below that bar, to me, is unacceptable. So sorry, that's a little tangent there, but that's I don't have much in terms of X-Men figures, so yeah.
That's a tough act to follow, Joe.
but follow it I must. So my figures. So the Cyclops from the story that I told in the, I want to say it was the first episode.
First episode, your triumvirate.
Yeah. That Cyclops. Also the Cable with like the silver, like the metal arm that kind of like flaps, and then he'd have like little button. It did like a little karate chop.
So many Cables.
There were
'90s run.
Like Cable and Wolverine was their cash cows. Like they just however many they could.
Did you have them all?
I think I did not have them all. That was, I think Will had most of them.
Because there was a black and aqua one. There was like a orange and blue one.
The orange and blue one was the space one. The orange and blue one was the space one, and that one was really cool. I think either you or Will had that.
Yeah.
And I played with it a lot. So there's a reoccurring theme here if you didn't know. But and then there was the blue. There was like a blue one with like a brown like shoulder pads that looked really cool. And then I remember getting Iceman and I want to say Magneto from Grandpa Bull and Uncle Ethan for one of my birthdays at McDonald's when I was a kid. That was really cool. Yeah.
What do you have now?
Now I have. You might buckle into whatever seat you're sitting in. Cable and Cyclops.
Whoa.
And I know, but I also picked up the X-Men '97 Gambit and Nightcrawler.
Nice.
So, all right. What about you? How many Colossuses or Colossi do you have?
I've got 2. I've got the Marvel Legends, and I've got the Diamond Select. I think it's Diamond Select. Both of them are really good figures. The Diamond Select one I have mint in package, and actually one as a Lucy. So
very nice.
Pretty stoked about that. My X-Men collection is growing. Figure Shield, where I get my figure cases so I can hang them up on my wall. They started selling the shields, so I've embraced the re-release retro versions.
Cool.
That also fit the '97 stuff. So I've been allowing myself to deep dive. So far in the retro line, I've got the black costume Storm, the Wolverine, the Gambit. I've got an X-Men '97 Gambit, but I see that growing. As far as Marvel Legends go, I've got X-Men, Blink, Gambit and Colossus, Cable, and Age of Apocalypse Magneto.
Speaking of Age of Apocalypse, I have every single Marvel Legends Age of Apocalypse.
I know.
Both waves.
I got to watch him open them and make the Colossus and sit there and look at that Colossus and just silently cuss to myself.
Because Marvel's not going to come out with one in the package for you.
Can we please get this in a package? And it drove me crazy because they did a Build-A-Figure of Apocalypse, if I remember correctly, and then they eventually just released it. So I was hoping, man, give us a package.
Yeah.
But then again, that might be something I check Etsy on to see if they have a package that I can put it in. Because I know Star Wars, they make the vintage cards.
Mm-hmm.
You can find some. I got a Plo Koon vintage card.
What you could do
vintage card Plo
is you could find an Apocalypse from the one that they sell just pre-built and in its own card, and just use that as kind of your base.
But then I'd have an apocalypse that's loose.
Yeah, well, look, somebody's going to get punched.
Then again,
in the
I
face.
got
It might
nephews. So
Yeah. No, they can't have that. That apocalypse he's a big one. He's a thick boy. That's a lot of plastic. That's a lot of plastic with that one.
Is the Build-A-Figure Colossus you're talking about the one with the red mask?
Yeah.
yeah,
Okay,
he's from
okay.
Age of Apocalypse.
Okay, yeah, okay.
So, the Figured Out cast would like to know what your favorite X-Men runs or specific issues that you liked. What are some of the figs you have, you want, and that you'd like to be released?
Or re-released.
Yeah, or re-released. Also, man, what are your teams? Thinking about, teams and how they would interact with each other is interesting to think about. So let us know in the comments.
Like, what's the scenario? Like, if your team is dropped in the middle of the Savage Land, who are you running with? What's gonna be, stuff going on? Like, let us know.
Let it get weird.
Get creative
Let
with
it get weird.
This kind of the low key birth idea of this entire podcast is just us sitting around, coming up with scenarios and building teams around it. So,
Like Stanley says, make mine Marvel. Joe, do you have anything in closing?
I don't just appreciate all of the feedback that we get, and just keep it coming.
Tyler, you got anything?
There's no such thing as too much giant robot.
Yeah.
So, before we go, I gotta ask this: did you see the Godzilla and Kong movie where they had a giant robot?
Peak
Godzilla?
cinema. Peak cinema.
Mecha Godzilla, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I just wanted to make sure.
I mean, I won't. Listen, there are things I haven't seen, but if it's got a giant robot in it, odds are pretty good I've consumed it. You guys ever see the movie Robot Jocks?
Mm-mm.
There's a '90s deep cut for you, Robot Jocks. Giant fighting robots. Just putting it out there. It's a horrible B movie. I loved it. I absolutely loved it. Still love it.
I mean, as far as giant robots and stuff fighting, Pacific Rim is peak cinema.
It's very good.
Yeah.
Pacific Rim is
still holds up.
Yeah, it's great.
But Joe, hit our outro.
Okay. Well, it can be a confusing time in life when you're walking down the street and all of a sudden giant robots start flinging mutants who can shoot stuff out of their eyeballs. And you think, man, what are we doing? What are we doing here? I'll tell you what you're doing here. You, dear listener, dear viewer, have been listening to us sit around and talk about those gifted youngsters from Xavier School and helping us figure it out. We'll see you
Later, y'all.
See you next time. Bye.
So
Oh, your Sentinel's about to walk off.
Uh-oh. Whoa. What are you... What's going on there? Mal, leave that alone. It's heavy. That's heavy, sweetheart.
That's fine.